Negative thoughts can spread through your mind like wildfire. One spark of doubt, one memory of failure, and suddenly you're consumed. But what if you could stop that fire before it burns you alive? For over 2,500 years, Buddhist wisdom has held the water to extinguish it. Most of us know this exhausting loop too well. The constant what ifs, the endless replay of mistakes, and that harsh inner critic that seems louder than our own voice. It's like being caught in quicksand. The harder you fight, the deeper you sink. And the scariest part? Sometimes it feels like there's no escape, as if your own mind has turned into both the prison and the jailer. But here's a truth that often gets forgotten. The mind is not your enemy, and these negative loops are not permanent. For centuries, Buddhist wisdom has offered practical, down-to-earth tools to quiet the inner storm. These teachings are not about escaping life or pretending to be positive all the time. Instead, they're about seeing the nature of thoughts clearly, understanding that they rise and fall like waves and you don't need to drown in them. Think about it. How many hours of your life have been stolen by thoughts that never came true? How often do you lie awake at night, replaying a conversation that ended years ago, as if rewriting it in your head could change the past? This is the trap of the overthinking mind. It tricks you into believing that worry equals preparation or that self-criticism equals growth. But deep down, we know neither is true. Worry doesn't prepare us, it paralyzes us. Self-criticism doesn't make us stronger. It drains our energy before we even begin. And yet, here's the liberating shift. You don't need to silence the mind by force. You don't need to win a battle with your thoughts. Buddhist practice shows us another way, a gentler, wiser way. Instead of pushing against the current, you learn to step out of the river and simply watch it flow. That simple act of awareness, practiced with mindfulness, changes everything. Over the next few minutes, I'll share with you 6 powerful but surprisingly simple practices drawn from Buddhism and mindfulness. These are not abstract ideas meant for monks on a distant mountain. They are living practices you can apply here and now in the middle of your busy, messy, real life. Whether you're stuck in traffic, overwhelmed at work, or lost in self-judgment, these tools are designed for you. Imagine this. Instead of drowning in the flood of what ifs, you learn to pause, breathe, and anchor yourself in the present moment. Instead of being trapped by self-criticism, you gently turn toward yourself with compassion, like placing a hand on your own shoulder and whispering, "It's okay, you don't have to carry this alone." With each practice, you're not trying to erase negative thoughts, but to change your relationship with them. They lose their grip when you stop identifying with them as me or mine. Think of it like building a toolbox for the mind. Each practice is a tool. Sometimes it's a gentle reminder, sometimes it's a deep breath, sometimes it's a shift in perspective. And the beauty is, you can return to this toolbox anytime thoughts start spiraling. It's like carrying a lantern into a dark room. The room doesn't disappear, but suddenly you can see clearly, and that clarity is enough to dissolve the fear. By the end of this journey, my hope is that you'll realize something profound. Peace of mind is not found by changing the world outside, but by learning to sit with the world inside. The chaos around you may never fully disappear, but the chaos within doesn't have to control you. And once you've tasted that inner stillness, even for a moment, you'll know it's always available, waiting for you in the space of a single breath. That's what awaits you in the next few minutes. 6 timeless practices, 6 Buddhist tricks that can loosen the knots of overthinking and open the doorway to calm. So, let's step into the very first section of today's video. The Buddhist view of an overthinking mind, the restless monkey within. If you've ever felt like your mind is constantly racing, darting from one thought to another without pause, you're not alone. Buddhism has a name for this condition. It's called Vitakka Vikara. It describes the untrained mind, one that jumps around endlessly, chasing after stories, fears, and comparisons. Picture it like a wild monkey leaping from branch to branch in the jungle. Never still, never satisfied, always restless. And here's the key insight. We are not our thoughts. Thoughts arise and pass away within consciousness like clouds moving across the sky. They seem real. They feel urgent, but they are fleeting. Yet most of our suffering comes not from the thoughts themselves, but from what we do with them. We compare our lives with others. We create endless inner stories about what could go wrong, and we try desperately to control outcomes that were never in our control to begin with. These three habits, comparison, storytelling, and control, become the prison walls that trap us inside cycles of overthinking. Have you noticed how comparison sneaks in almost every day? You open social media and instantly measure your life against someone else's highlight reel. Storytelling follows close behind. I'll never be enough. They must be happier than me. My time has already passed. And then comes the urge to control. If I just think harder, if I just plan more, maybe I can make everything safe. But control is an illusion. The tighter we grip, the more life slips through our fingers. Buddhist wisdom invites us to flip the script. Instead of trying to silence the mind by force, we learn to step back and observe. Imagine standing on the riverbank, watching the water rush by. Each thought is like a leaf carried by the current. You don't need to jump in and grab every leaf. You don't need to push the water upstream. You simply let it flow. And this shift is powerful because the mind doesn't need to be destroyed. It just needs to be understood. Thoughts are not enemies. They are passing guests. When you welcome them with awareness, but without attachment, they lose their power to wound you. Think about it this way. When you were a child, maybe you believed the shadows in your room were monsters. But the moment someone turned on the light, you saw they were just shapes on the wall. Overthinking is like those shadows, frightening only until you shine the light of awareness upon them. This is why Buddhist practice does not demand that you suppress or fight your thoughts. It asks only that you notice them, like clouds drifting by. Some clouds are dark, some light, but none of them stay forever. The sky remains vast and open, untouched by what passes through it. You're that sky. Your thoughts are just weather. So in this first part, remember the central truth. You are not your thoughts. They are temporary appearances in consciousness, like waves that rise and fall on the surface of an infinite ocean. The suffering begins only when you mistake the wave for the whole ocean or when you try to stop the waves from rising at all. Our journey today begins here, with the monkey mind, with Vitakka Vikara. Understanding this restless nature of thought is the first step toward peace. In the next practices, we'll explore how to gently train this wild monkey, not by chaining it, but by giving it a place to rest. Because once the monkey learns to sit quietly, the whole jungle of the mind begins to settle into stillness. At this point, we've seen how the restless monkey of the mind, Vitakka Vikara, keeps us trapped in endless motion. But understanding the nature of this monkey is only the beginning. To truly find peace, we need to look deeper into why its chatter hurts us so much. And that brings us smoothly into the next part of today's journey. The roots of mental suffering. Why we suffer is not because of thoughts, but our attachment to them. Here's the paradox. Thoughts on their own are harmless. They're like passing clouds or the wind moving through the trees. The problem isn't the thought itself. It's the way we cling to it, wrestle with it, or try to control it. Imagine a spark landing on your skin. If you brush it off gently, it leaves no mark. But if you press on it, hold on to it, or panic and thrash around, you create a burn. That is what happens when we grasp at thoughts. They leave scars not because of their nature, but because of our reaction. We all know the cycle. A thought of regret appears, and instead of letting it pass, we replay it 100 times, dissecting every word we said, every action we took. Or we imagine the future, piling on layers of what-ifs, trying desperately to prepare for every possible outcome. And when life doesn't match the script we wrote in our heads, suffering multiplies. Not because life betrayed us, but because we believed the story in our minds more than the reality unfolding before us. Buddhism teaches a radical but liberating truth. Suffering is born not from thinking too much, but from believing every thought as if it were the ultimate truth. We don't suffer from clouds in the sky. We suffer when we mistake them for permanent storms. Why do we do this? Because deep down we crave control. We want life to follow our expectations, our timelines, our imagined safety nets. So we cling to pleasant thoughts, try to push away painful ones, and resist the flow of change. But reality is fluid. The river never stops moving. Trying to hold it in your hands is like trying to grasp water. It slips through no matter how tight your grip. Here's the Buddhist alternative. Instead of fixing, curing, or fighting our thoughts, we simply see them for what they are. Just as you wouldn't try to grab a gust of wind or glue clouds to the sky, you don't need to grab or fix every thought that passes through. You let it arise, you let it go. That's the practice. And something beautiful happens when you do this. An inner spaciousness opens up. Instead of being trapped in a tiny room filled with noisy echoes, you step into a vast field of silence. Thoughts may still drift by, but they no longer dominate the entire space. You begin to notice the present moment, the sound of your breath, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the subtle stillness beneath all activity. This is where peace begins, not in silencing every thought, but in no longer being enslaved by them. Suffering eases when you stop confusing the weather for the sky, the waves for the ocean, or the stories of the mind for the truth of your life. So as we move forward, carry this insight with you. Your thoughts are not the enemy. It is your attachment to them, your refusal to let them come and go, that fuels the fire of suffering. By loosening that grip, by seeing clearly and letting go, you return to the freedom that was always within you. In the last part, we discovered that our suffering doesn't truly come from the thoughts themselves, but from our clinging to them, our endless attempts to control, avoid, or hold on. This insight opens the door to freedom, but insight alone is not enough. We need practice, something tangible, something we can return to when the mind begins to spin again. And that brings us to the next step in our journey. We will now move into the next part of today's teaching. Practice 1, naming the storm, the art of thought labeling. At its core, this practice comes from Satipatthana, the foundation of mindfulness. It is a way to see thoughts clearly without being pulled into their gravity. Because the truth is, thoughts are like passing weather systems. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, sometimes nothing more than thin clouds drifting across an endless sky. Thought labeling gives us the ability to notice the weather without confusing ourselves with the storm. So how does it work? It begins with the simplest but most profound step, realizing that you are thinking. This may sound obvious, but most of the time we're lost in thought without even knowing it. The first spark of awareness, I'm thinking, is the moment the spell begins to break. You step out of the dream and return to presence. Once you notice, the next step is to name the kind of thought that has appeared. Is it worrying about the future? Replaying an old mistake? Harshly judging yourself or someone else? Planning tomorrow's to-do list? Fantasizing about what might be? Or perhaps comparing yourself with others? By giving the thought a gentle label, worrying, judging, planning, you transform it from a shadowy monster into something recognizable, almost harmless. It's like turning on the light in a dark room. But here's the key. The point is not to fight the thought or to get rid of it. The point is simply to observe without attaching. You don't have to wrestle the cloud out of the sky. You just have to notice that it is a cloud and not the sky itself. That noticing creates space, a vital distance between you and the thought. Suddenly it is not "I am a failure," it is simply "judging thought is here." From this space, you can gently guide yourself back to the present moment. The easiest anchor is the breath, the rise and fall of the chest, the sensation of air moving in and out, or perhaps the feeling of your feet against the ground, the sounds around you, the contact of your hands resting together. These simple sensations remind you, you are here, alive, safe, now. And finally, you add compassion. When a painful thought arises, don't just observe it coldly, hold it with kindness, the way you might comfort a child who is frightened. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't think this," try, "Oh, worry is here. May I be gentle with myself." This shift changes everything, because mindfulness without compassion can feel sterile, but mindfulness with compassion becomes medicine. The effect of this practice is subtle yet profound. Over time, you begin to notice a gap opening between who you are and what your mind produces. You realize, I am not my thoughts. Thoughts come and go, but awareness remains. The grip loosens. The suffering softens. And what's left is a calm spaciousness in which life can unfold with greater ease. Thought labeling is like learning to name the waves in the ocean without drowning in them. By naming, you stop identifying. By observing, you stop clinging. And by returning with compassion, you rediscover the stillness that was never lost. At times, when we name a thought and look directly at it, it feels as if another window inside our heart has opened. Yet that window only leads us to the courtyard, not the vast sky. To truly step into the greater expanse, we need another secret: learning to see the impermanence within every passing thought. And this is the key to our next practice: recognizing the impermanence of thoughts. At the heart of this practice lies the ancient Buddhist principle of anicca, the truth that everything is impermanent. Nothing, no feeling, no memory, no moment of joy or pain lasts forever. And this truth also applies to our thoughts. They seem solid, overwhelming, even permanent when they arise. But if you look closely, you'll see every thought has a beginning, a peak, and then a fading away. Like a wave rising, cresting, and dissolving back into the ocean. The practice is simple yet profound. You sit with a thought, whether it's anxious, judgmental, or self-critical, and instead of trying to push it away, you observe it carefully. You notice how it arises almost out of nowhere. You watch it swell, gather energy, try to pull you into its story, and then, inevitably, you see it fade, weaken, dissolve, until it disappears altogether. No matter how strong it feels, it never stays. Imagine standing at a busy train station. Thoughts are like trains passing through. Some carry fear, some carry anger, some carry longing. You might feel the urge to jump on every train, but with this practice, you simply watch them arrive, stop briefly, and then leave again. You don't have to ride every train. You don't have to believe every thought. Here's a phrase you can gently repeat to yourself when negative thoughts arise. This thought is only temporary. This reminder is powerful. It breaks the illusion that the thought defines you or that it will last forever. Suddenly, the thought is lighter, less threatening, just another passing visitor. With time, this practice reshapes the way you relate to your mind. Instead of being crushed by every wave, you start to surf. Instead of being trapped in the storm, you begin to see the sky beyond the clouds. You understand deeply that thoughts are not reality. They are passing appearances in awareness. The effect is freedom. When you realize that no thought stays, you no longer feel compelled to fight them, control them, or run from them. You allow them to come and go, like leaves floating on a river. This shifts your entire experience of life. Negative thoughts lose their grip. The mind grows lighter, and your presence deepens in the here and now. Witnessing the impermanence of thoughts is like learning to sit by the ocean without fearing the tide. You know waves will rise, but you also know they will fall. That knowledge is peace. That understanding is liberation. There is a quiet power in realizing that every thought is impermanent. When we learn to watch thoughts arise and dissolve, we step out of their grip. But even with this awareness, there is one voice inside us that often refuses to fade away so easily: the inner critic. That voice that whispers, "You're not enough. You always fail. No one will ever understand you." It can feel louder than all the other thoughts combined. And if we don't know how to meet it, we may spend a lifetime trapped in its shadow. This brings us to the next practice: learning to befriend the critical voice in your mind. Think about it for a moment. What is the tone of your inner dialogue? Is it gentle or is it harsh? Many of us live with an invisible bully in our own minds, one that constantly measures us against impossible standards. The irony is that this critic isn't truly our enemy. At its root, it was born as a misguided protector. Long ago, it may have tried to keep us safe from rejection, from shame, from mistakes. But over time, it turned into a prison guard instead of a guardian. The Buddhist approach here is not to silence or fight the critic, but to transform the relationship. Just as we learn to see thoughts as clouds, we can also soften the voice of self-judgment and guide it toward compassion. Here is how the practice unfolds. Step 1. Recognize the critic. Pause and notice the exact words of self-judgment when they arise. Don't blur them out. Listen clearly. Perhaps it says, "You'll never succeed," or "You always mess things up." Simply identifying this voice begins to loosen its control. Step 2. See the pain beneath. Ask yourself, why did this voice appear? Often it reflects an old wound, a time when criticism from others left a scar. The inner critic mimics that voice, thinking it will protect you from future hurt. When you see the suffering underneath, the critic starts to look less like a monster and more like a frightened child. Step 3. Respond with kindness. Here is where the transformation begins. Instead of fueling the critic with more resistance, meet it with compassion. You might say to yourself, I know you're trying to protect me, but I don't need to be attacked to grow. I deserve patience and encouragement. Replace the harsh words with affirmations rooted in love, such as, I am still worthy, even when I make mistakes. I am learning, I am growing, and that is enough. It may feel strange at first, like speaking a new language, but with practice, the voice of compassion becomes stronger than the voice of criticism. Over time, the critic does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes a wise friend who nudges you to grow, but without cruelty. The effect of this practice is profound. Imagine carrying within you not an enemy, but a trusted ally. Imagine waking each day to an inner voice that says, I believe in you. Keep going. This creates a sanctuary inside your own heart, a place of safety and healing where you no longer fear yourself. And here's the beautiful part. As you soften toward yourself, your relationships with others also begin to change. When you no longer attack yourself internally, you stop projecting that attack outward. You meet others with greater patience, greater empathy. The healing inside radiates outward. So the next time the critic appears, pause, listen, understand. Then gently shift the conversation from judgment to compassion. This is not just a trick for calming your mind. It's a way of reparenting yourself, of becoming the kind of presence you always needed. And that is the essence of this practice. To transform the harshest voice in your mind into the most supportive one, creating inner safety that allows true healing to blossom. Sometimes our mind feels like a crowded marketplace, voices pulling us in every direction, each one demanding attention. In such chaos, it's easy to lose sight of who we are beneath the noise. But within Buddhist Vipassana practice, there is a gentle technique that helps us step back and see clearly. Today we'll explore what I like to call the art of mental noting, and this will be the next step in our journey together. So far, we've learned how to label thoughts and how to soften the harsh critic within. But now let us go deeper. We'll move into a practice that trains the mind to distinguish between the thinker and the observer, to realize that the voice in our head is not the whole of who we are. And this is where the practice of mental noting begins. At its core, mental noting is beautifully simple. When a thought arises, whether it's remembering, planning, judging, or imagining, we give it a quiet label, not with judgment, not with analysis, but simply naming it. Just as you might glance at a cloud and whisper, cloud, then let it drift on. This gentle act creates a subtle but powerful shift. You stop being trapped inside the thought, and instead you begin to see it from the outside. Imagine you're sitting by a river, watching leaves float downstream. Each leaf carries something, perhaps an anxious memory, a plan for tomorrow, or a self-criticism you've carried for years. Instead of clinging to the leaf, you simply whisper its name, planning, judging, remembering, and let the current take it. One by one, the leaves pass, and in time, the river becomes less overwhelming because you know you don't need to catch every leaf. This practice also reveals something deeper, the patterns of your own mind. You may notice, for instance, that most of your thoughts are about the future or that self-judgment appears more than you realize. With each note, you develop what Buddhists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to see the mind's habits clearly without drowning in them. This is the seed of wisdom. Of course, the challenge is that the mind often wants to analyze. When you say planning, part of you may want to jump in and finish the plan. When you say judging, you may immediately judge yourself for being judgmental. But the beauty of this practice is that you don't have to follow any of it. You just name the thought and gently return to the present, your breath, your body, the simple reality of being here. Over time, mental noting becomes like a lantern in the dark corridors of the mind. Instead of stumbling blindly through every thought, you light the way, and with the light comes choice. You can walk past the thought instead of getting lost inside it. The result? A growing sense of freedom. The unconscious loops that once ruled your days begin to lose their power. You realize that thoughts are not commands, they are just visitors. And in that realization, you reclaim a spacious inner peace that was always yours. So as we continue this journey, let's carry this lantern with us. In the next few minutes, I invite you to experiment. The next time a thought arises, simply note it, remembering, planning, judging, imagining, and then let it go. Like leaves on the river, let them drift. You'll discover that the less you fight, the lighter your mind becomes. And soon silence will feel less like emptiness and more like home. In the last step, we learned how to gently label and note the movements of the mind, like watching ripples form and fade on the surface of water. But now let's imagine something even more radical. What if you could stop the ripple at its very beginning? Not by force, not by suppression, but by simply pausing. This is where we step into the next practice, what I call finding stillness in the pause. Here's the paradox of our mental world. The more we try to fight thoughts, the stronger they become. The more we chase peace, the more it runs away. But if we dare to stop, even for a brief moment, something shifts. The storm of thoughts loses its momentum. And in that small window of silence, we begin to see more clearly. The practice unfolds in 5 steps, simple but profoundly transformative. Pause. Whenever a negative thought arises, don't rush to argue with it or push it away. Just stop, as though you're setting down a heavy bag you've been carrying. Attune. Bring your awareness back to your breath. Notice its rhythm, the inhale, the exhale, like gentle waves against the shore. Understand. Instead of reacting, ask yourself, what is the feeling beneath this thought? Is it fear, regret, or loneliness? Naming the root emotion takes away its hidden power. Shift. Gently redirect your attention to what is real right now. Your body seated, your breath flowing, the ground beneath your feet. The present moment becomes your anchor. Engage. From that place of clarity, act with wisdom and compassion. Instead of lashing out or collapsing, you respond in a way that heals both yourself and those around you. This method is not about escaping life, but about facing it with more steadiness. Picture yourself worrying about the future, regretting the past, or criticizing yourself endlessly. Instead of spiraling down, you stop and breathe. Suddenly, the fear loses its sharpness. The regret softens. The self-criticism feels less convincing. You've broken the cycle right where it begins. The beauty of this practice is its immediacy. You don't need a meditation cushion, a quiet room, or hours of retreat. You can use it at work, in a crowded subway, even in the middle of an argument. It's like carrying a secret doorway inside you, a way back to balance whenever the world shakes you off center. And here's the deeper truth. Every pause is a seed. Each time you choose to stop and see, you're planting a moment of awareness that grows stronger with practice. Over time, you no longer feel trapped by thoughts. You begin to live from a place of calm strength, where clarity and compassion naturally guide your steps. So the next time your mind starts to spin, pause, breathe, and see. That single act can change not just your thoughts, but the entire direction of your life. Each practice before has helped us loosen the grip of thoughts, opening doors to inner freedom. But freedom also needs solid ground to stand on, a steady anchor when the storms return. And that anchor has always been here, closer than we realize. It is the breath, and that is also the final practice in this journey. When we step back and look at this journey together, one truth becomes clear. Mindfulness practice is not something locked away in temples or reserved for meditation halls. Its true essence lives right here, in the raw fabric of our daily lives. Every moment, whether you are sipping your morning coffee, walking down a quiet street, or even doubting yourself in a difficult decision, can be a gateway back to presence. That is the heart of the practice, to return again and again to what is real right now. The beauty is that it doesn't demand perfection. You don't need to silence your thoughts forever or transform into someone flawless. All it asks is that whenever you notice yourself lost in worry, in regret, in self-criticism, you gently guide yourself home. Each return is not a failure. It is a small revolution of peace. Every time you choose presence over spiraling thoughts, you reclaim a piece of freedom that cannot be taken from you. This is the deeper meaning of Buddhist practice. Not to kill the mind, not to reject life, but to live with greater compassion, awareness, and freedom. Imagine if your day was no longer ruled by what-ifs, old mistakes, or harsh judgments. Imagine walking through challenges with the steady ground of your own breath, the clarity of seeing your thoughts for what they are, and the tenderness of treating yourself like a true friend. This is not a dream. It is possible, starting in the very next breath you take. And maybe that's the quiet miracle. Peace is not somewhere far away, waiting for the perfect retreat or the perfect version of you. Peace is already here, in this moment, if you dare to touch it. The world outside may remain noisy, uncertain, even chaotic. But within you, a calm river is always flowing, ready to hold you. All it takes is the courage to pause, to see, and to return. So I want to leave you with this. Let today be the beginning of your own quiet revolution, the revolution of presence, the revolution of kindness, the revolution of freedom that starts from within. If these practices have touched you, let them not stay as words but as living choices in your daily life. And now I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share one insight or feeling you are carrying from this journey. Perhaps it's a thought you want to release, a moment of peace you discovered, or even a commitment to practice one of these tools tomorrow morning. Your words might become the spark that inspires someone else to begin their own journey too. If this video resonated with you, please like it, share it with someone who may need a reminder of peace, and subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. This is not the end. It is only the beginning. Every breath, every step, every return to presence is a chance to live more awake, more compassionate, more free. And that truly is the gift of this practice.